Oh my god. Hey witches! It's been a moment. It's been a minute. Let me take a sip of my tea. Today we're doing a revisiting video, and Patreon voted on this revisiting video, so thank you Patreon. You too have the ability to choose my next YouTube video if you log on and join at any of the tiers on my Patreon. And we're going to be revisiting the spells in my first book, Spells for Change, a guide for modern witches. Here's the thing about this book. I love it so dearly and I love it for what it was at the time, and I still am very proud of it. It was very hard to write. It's very hard to write a beginner book on witchcraft that is going to apply to everyone where they are in that moment. It's actually, I would argue, impossible because there's so many different practices and crafts. But I did kind of write this for someone who either has only a small inkling of witchcraft or is just beginning their craft and is looking for maybe ways to dive a little deeper with their spell work, their practice. They're not really sure like what the foundations are or where to begin. And for me, that is what this book is and where it was at this time. I wrote it when I was really young, and I do feel as though ultimately that did affect the book itself. Also, me being really big on TikTok at the time, not necessarily saying like part of it was the reason I got the book deal was because I was super big on TikTok, which I'm super grateful for because it's opened a doorway to writing more books on more niche, nuanced topics like folk magic and ancestral reconnection. We can put a little graphic of ancestral magic here. If you're really interested in my folk magic, my ancestral veneration, that's the path you want to walk. This is the best. This is the book I wrote for this, and it has like basically all of these things. It's been reported from the people who've read it that it's very thoughtfully written. It's very, you know, passionately written. It's something that for me, it took me 6 months to write this book because I only had 6 months. And the other book, I demanded a year, specifically because after we published this book, even like within the year of it took it to get published, my practice was actively changing and I was finding my footing in new ways. And I disagreed with some of the things in this book. And I was like, I wish I had had a full year to go back and change it and to go back and get information. And here's the thing with writing books is usually you don't get a say in how long you get to write a book. You are given a timeline. And for me, I was very, you know, like I really want longer for the second book, and it feels a lot more in line with like what I talk about now on my platforms, when this feels a lot more in line with what I talked about in my platforms maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And here's the thing with books is like as you grow and change, you're going to disagree with things that you wrote 3 to 5 years ago. You're going to change, your path is going to change. And I think a lot of people read this book and are disappointed that it's not exactly like my practice now. But I think the thing to keep in mind is this book was specifically written to be a beginner book. It was specifically written for people who have a very limited knowledge of what witchcraft even is, or specifically written for people who have no knowledge of what witchcraft is and are curious about it. And that's how I recommend the book to people. If you're like a year into your practice and you're like, I kind of know what path I'm going down, I'm interested in folk magic, I'm interested in all these things, I have an idea of where I'm going, I don't know if Spells for Change is going to resonate with you, and that's okay. I do think it's still helpful to people, and it's still a book that I poured so much time, energy, and love into, and for that I am still really proud of it. If you're interested more in ancestral veneration and folk magic and that's the path you want to go, I will recommend Ancestral Magic for you because I think that is also a beginner book, but for a completely different niche practice that I wasn't as active in when I wrote Spells for Change, which is why you don't see a lot of it reflected, and that's okay. But because we are people who change and grow and our practices change and grow, I am going to be revisiting some things in this book, specifically spells, but also the anatomy of a spell, because I like doing revisited series and saying, hey, this is how I've changed and grown. And if you've read this book and you were like, I feel like there's something to be desired, you can watch this YouTube video, see how my practice has changed and how I am like reflecting on it now. But also you can note that like oh, maybe the next book is the one that I'm into, or maybe you can stick with my YouTube, and that's also fine. There are some things that I definitely still agree with in this book. I also love the art. My goal is to get a tattoo of one of the illustrations from this book and then another illustration from my new book. And the thing about this too is, like, I could not find the illustrator for like 5 years, and then she followed me on Instagram and I was like, oh my god, it's you, I've been looking for you for ages. She's like, what? I'm like, they didn't tell me who you were. And so I have to find her username so I can link her down in the comments, because the art itself is just so pretty. And I think they credit her, or at least did acknowledgements, but it was, since it was through the publishing house, I don't know if they mentioned her by name. So that's why I'm like, I would like to put her in the comments. Some things I wish I included specifically in this book, and I wrote them down so I didn't forget. A little bit more on the differences between folkloric and traditional witchcraft, and between the folkloric and the Christian devil, because at the time, and I do still think like this is a huge thing, that like if you're in a circle of people that are all witches, you don't experience it a lot, but people still get told that they're worshiping the devil when they say they're a witch all the time. So for me, it was important to include, because that's still a thing that gets said about witches, and still a truth that a lot of people believe about witches. And especially as our current state of world progresses further into Christian nationalism, I think it's important to be like, hey, some people do work with the devil, but it's not actually the devil that you think. The folkloric devil is very fascinating, and I do believe, Polish folk witch has definitely talked about the folkloric devil quite a lot sometimes, especially in her discussion of folk magics. Kitchen Toad Mohegan also talks about the folkloric devil, so if you're interested in that, those are some places to go. I also would say I wish I had talked a little bit more about folk magic versus witchcraft. I don't think I had the knowledge or vocabulary at the time to really share that much about it, but I do have a blog post up now that kind of talks about what is folk magic, differences in witchcraft. Some people say that folk magic and witchcraft are the same. Some people keep that delineation differently. I think that it's a little bit of A, a little bit of B. I am a folk witch. I am influenced by Italian American folk magic, but also witchcraft. And because those two meld together, I call myself a witch still, but do I think that historic folk magic and historic witchcraft were similar? No. Another great book that I'm reading right now that I recommend on kind of like folk magic versus historic witchcraft versus like what is a modern witch, Wild Witchcraft by Rebecca Byer. Fantastic book. We're reading it for book club this month if you're looking to read in a group. I absolutely adore this book specifically because she kind of went in and was like, here's what historical witchcraft kind of looks like, and maybe a timeline of historic witchcraft and all of these things. And we still don't know what it means to be a modern witch, which I love that open to interpretation. I think it's very powerful. I do still believe that casting spells is to create an outcome. That's it. We're manipulating energy to get a certain outcome. But like, look at this pretty illustration. I love it. So the first thing I wanted to revisit is the anatomy of a spell. In this book, I wrote the anatomy of a spell as a focus. What aspect of your life is the spell focusing on? Good to have an idea. Intent or desired goal. What do you want to achieve with the spell? Materials. What materials would help bring you about the goal of this spell? I would say my kind of reworking for this area, focus and intent or desired goal are still very important to know. What area are we looking at? Is it a money spell? Is it a career spell, etc.? Are we looking at love? And then what do we want in that area? I would also rephrase, instead of materials, we can look at it that way, but as my practice now, I would say what spirits or allies would help me achieve this goal? Because there are a lot of spirits and allies that I'm like, what would they help with this? Another thing I would add here is timing. How fast do you need this to happen? Is this a slow long-term spell or is it a fast spell? Depending on that, I would add maybe looking at more Venusian or Saturn things. Not Venusian. For long-term spells, looking at more Saturn, building structure over time, versus more mercurial spirits for quick movement. Final one. This is something that I don't know why I didn't include because it was definitely on my mind at the time. What is accessible to you? What do you have that you can use in this moment? It is absolutely fantastic to go out of your way to get very specific ingredients and spells and spirits to work with. I have certain spirits that I have to go so out of my way to get things from them. And that's when you kind of want a little bit more push in your spell. And you're like, okay, I could work with this spirit, but I'm gonna get more push and I have the time and this is accessible to me if I wait to do this. I would also say on page 21, asking the following questions as I formulate a spell. What is the goal of the spell? Yes. Can I achieve this goal without the use of spell work? I think that it's still okay to do a little witchcraft even if you think that you're gonna achieve the goal without spell work. I know that it's really important to like look at mundane things, and that was the context of this writing of like, yes, you should absolutely like double check that you're like applying for jobs before doing a job spell, but also at the same time, I will be sitting here and be like, I'm pretty sure this is gonna work if I don't do anything, but I'm gonna do something anyway. If you have the time, energy, space, materials accessible to you, spirits that wanna help. I would also add in divining before spell work. Something I do in my practice now is I divine before every single spell I do, especially if it's bigger. There are certain spells that I'm like, no, I can feel this and this is right. And there are certain spells that I'm like, no, I want to make sure that these spirits are giving me a yes, my ancestors are giving me a yes. And usually that divination portion kind of rules out the next question, which is like tampering with forces and things that make the spell backfire easily. I mean, like, so there's like nuance here, right? Free will depends on the situation. Like, am I going to go out of my way and do a love spell on someone I've never met just because I feel like it? No, because I don't think that's gonna work, and I think my ancestors would be upset. However, depending on like the tradition and the folk magic, sometimes free will is something that we have to influence, specifically with domination magic, specifically with a situation where someone is in danger, specifically when someone like that. I understand that sometimes that needs to be done. I think I was writing this mostly because I was like not quite as culturally competent as I am now, which is okay. Weather. There are so many Italian spells about the weather. Like, this is just up to your opinion. Like, rain magic is a huge thing. There's so many spells that I found in anthropological and academic sources from like old Italian folk magic that makes rain stop. And it really is like something I would focus this more instead of this question. I'd look at what is our goal here? Like, what is this a need? Am I going to lose my crops if this storm continues? Am I in a place of like safety if this fire doesn't get put out? Fire wards, protection against certain types of weather, making sure that you're not struck by lightning or thunder when traveling. These are all very common historical things that that folk magic and I guess witchcraft also did. I know that folk magic did it, at least in my context, but like, I don't think my spell's gonna backfire. I don't think that the storm god's gonna look at me and go, hello. I think that it's just more about need for me now than it is about like, is this crossing a line that I'm not even sure exists? Celestial forces. As much as I dislike the Aradia, there's an entire thing in it about like Italian witches yelling and cursing Diana. Sometimes you gotta shake your fist at the sky a little bit to get things to happen. Does this spell bring me, I actually really, this is the only one that I would really like dislike because I understand what I'm trying to say, but I hate the phrasing of it. Does this spell bring me closer to my higher self and or serve the higher good? Hate that wording. I understand what I was trying to say. For example, are you doing the spell for petty reasons like proving a point or serving your ego? Also hate that wording. Or are you genuine in your intent, feel this would benefit you or others? Without like telling, like, should you be doing petty spells? No. Divining, this is why I said I should have put this in here. Divining before your spell work will literally rule out any of these questions, because if I get told a no, I'm not doing it. And sometimes we can feel as though we are really truly doing something that is for the best, and it is coming from a petty place. Sometimes we really truly feel like we are doing something and it is meant to be, and it's coming from a petty place. This is about slowing down, asking the cards, asking your friends, just getting a second opinion before doing like really big spells. And I don't think this necessarily applies in the context of like, I don't know, I'm doing a little spell to cleanse my space. I think it's more in terms of like, these specifically are in the context of like people who are really down with willy-nilly casting hexes, willy-nilly doing domination, willy-nilly doing love magic, willy-nilly doing like return, like all these things that could technically, if done improperly, harm someone, but do have a cultural background to them that 100% makes sense for that background. And have to be done in a justified manner. So the other question is, am I divining beforehand? And is this justified? Not for the higher good, is this justified? That's how I phrase it now. And I believe in that phrasing more because it takes the idea off of us needing to do things for the highest good of everyone, which why is it our place to like, I don't think that it's always our decision what is the highest good for everyone. Highest good for ourselves, yeah, but not for other people. Is it justified? Is justice being served in this situation? And also, if you're doing client work, what does the client need? What does the client think is justified? Do the cards agree? Is this price or cost of the spell one I'm willing to pay? Cannot believe I didn't elaborate on this. Honestly, this is what I mean. I love baby me so much, but what were you doing? What is this? What do you mean by this? I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of price or costs to spells a lot of the time. Like I think energetic cost, yeah, or I could have been talking about like price of spell. I think that all we're moving energy around. We're gonna get drained no matter what. Look at how it's shining on me though, that's cute. I'm not even gonna address that because I feel like if you watch my content, you know my opinions now on spell work, and I'm just not dealing with that. Is this spell one that I'm willing to spend my time and energy on? Yeah. Do I have the energy and training to complete this spell? This is literally just the same, what I just said in a different font. I don't know what I mean by training. Like, do I know what I'm doing? I think my kind of take with spell work is if you don't know how to undo something, it's not best practice to do it. And I say that because it's different for everyone, but from a place of experience of there are lots of spells that I wish I could have undone and I did not know how to do. But not in a fear-mongering way, just to like make sure you kind of understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. So if it needs to be undone or reversed, you know how to do that. We're scooting into spell area. Witch bottle. I do love a good witch bottle. I will say this spell specifically now, I would not use this many objects. And I also wish that I had kept some like, basically had said why I was using certain spell work in this area. Fingernails and hair is a tag lock, that makes sense. Red thread is protective, I understand. Vinegar, I understand it's sour. Wine is to kind of be blood, or urine to be baptized in your name. Pins are sharp objects. Chili peppers, I understand. Cloves, I understand. Thyme, not sure why I threw that in there. Eggshells, sure, yes, I don't use eggshells that much anymore. Sea salt, yes, because in my practice, sea salt is a purifier, so it keeps the spell good. Like it actually purifies things as it's moving through, and wormwood, also good. Like I said, I wish that I had added why I'm doing this or why I added in. However, you can do it with like thyme, cloves, all of these things if you have them all in hand. But I do think that working with a few spirits and a few plant spirits is more beneficial than a lot of spirits all at once. Okay, so another thing, this boundaries exercise I put in here, you would be surprised how often I am actually recommending this to clients still. Like, still being like, let's do green light, yellow light, red light with like what's okay in your relationships. This is a exercise that for me, I still use and recommend to people when necessary, which means in my book that it stands up. Self-love and healing satchel. So for me, I don't do a lot of, I do love a velvet or fabric satchel. I would probably embroider this with a sigil. I don't use a lot of rose quartz anymore. Stone is good, cinnamon is good, rose petals is good, blue or pink candle, hibiscus and mugwort is all good. I love that I wrote This chant was written at the ripe age of 16. If you find it cheesy, feel free to make your own, because it was, but I still think it's pretty good. You are just saying your intention, and for those who are like new to spell work, laying out these things, like I said, I do wish I had written why I was putting those things in there, because I did that for one of the spells in the book, but not the other ones. We need a little bit more things. Basic banishing ritual. Oh, this is real simple. This is more like the magic I'm doing on a day-to-day. Black candle, piece of paper, string, fireproof plate. That's it. That's all you need. A bath to banish negativity. I did this quite a lot for a long time. It works very well. And in this one is why I'm writing out the materials. And I do think I would have preferred in this book to write out like, this is why I'm using this, and this is what you should say as you add it to the spell, or ask it to banish protective energy. Ask the spirit to help you with this. Return to sender. This is a very nice sympathetic magic ritual. My return to senders are a little nastier. I do use hydrangea, chili peppers, black pepper, and salt though. That's kind of my trifecta still. Anyone who, yeah, just that returning negative energy tenfold, threefold, whatever you want. The funny thing is about this little quote, the like, I am rubber, you are glue, that I added in this section. Someone was like, this is such a, I don't read reviews, but like, I remember someone sent it to me and they're like, this is such a like stupid little thing. I didn't know that this was a saying before I wrote it. It was just what I was using for my return to senders, and it worked. Like, people are like, this is like a child, it's like a little child's, like, it's like a rhyme, right? That people have said before, and like, I found out was like an actual thing that sometimes people say to help like manage hurtful feelings. I didn't know that, but I was still using it. And here's the thing about like intentions, things we say during spell work, etc. I believe in the power of something that has been used many a time by people. I think that the Our Father, even however you feel about it, has been used so many times by so many different people as a prayer of protection, of healing, of solace, that it has a layer of power to it. The same way that certain symbols and sigils that have this kind of layers and generations and years and decades of use in a certain way, then have a little bit of that energy stuck to them. So if there is somewhere out there a third grader who is saying this over and over again to somebody to try and kind of help them deal with complicated emotions, so be it. It was working for me at the time, and I still use it and have no issues with it. So even if you think that a prayer is cheesy or doesn't sound that serious, or it's like not gonna work because it's like A, B, and C, you would be surprised. See what works instead of shitting on things because you think they're like basic. I don't know. Like, I guess that's just like, and that goes for all of witchcraft. Like, the most basic and simple magic that I have ever done is some of my most effective. And so many people like turn their nose up at simple magic and accessible magic because they feel like it's not as powerful. Any issues, and I think that the whole idea of like powerful is like a whole other thing we can get into. So bindings, I still do this binding ritual pretty easily. It's morning glory vines, is also bindweed vine, and you can use either of those. Before we get more into that, domination magic, I did like that I put this in the book. I do think there was a little bit more nuance here that I hadn't had access to that could have been included. So that's all I'll say for this area. I think that if you want to know about the history of domination magic, you should go to somebody who is versed in it, who is in a practice that has done it. Italian folk magic does have some domination magic. Here's the thing too, is the interesting thing about domination magic is like, technically, we are literally putting our will onto things all the time, every day with witchcraft. In the same way that it's all a little vampiric. Everything comes from somewhere. I think that is something that, and I'm not sure if I included that, but like, yeah, learning to exert your influence over others can be a foundational part of the craft, since most aspects of witchcraft are about projecting your influence and will into the world. I stand by that. Do I think that we should be like dominating willy-nilly? No, the same thing with like more intense spells. We shouldn't be doing willy-nilly. We should be asking, is it justified? Is it worth it? Are we divining beforehand? With that, and with holding room for more nuance that I didn't have access to at the time, why do like you're always doing a little bit of domination work? There's some domination that, you know, like we can have a conversation about ethics and morals, and I do also wish I included in this book how to create your own ethics and morals as a witch. I think that my ethics are pretty set. For me, like my ethics center on that question of, is it justified, which comes from the Death Witch, or Loretta Ledesma, and my classes I've taken from her, and what I've learned from her as a friend, as a peer, as a colleague, is questions of justification. Is it justified? Is this justice? And that is how I form my pattern of ethics and morals, along with outside sources and basically people kind of weighing in, and my cards and my spirit team. This basic binding ritual, 10 out of 10. I really like it. I can still do it. It's pretty standard. It's also a freezer spell, which I love. You have no power over me. So this spell in particular, I did quite a lot when I was a kid, when I was first starting my craft, and I did it on jewelry because it's like almost like an anti-influence spell. So other folks can't influence you, and an extra layer of protection with that specific view. I created it originally when I was very young, and I probably would have changed some things here. Once again, time is really present in this, but I also think that time is something I was using a lot of when I wrote this because it's what I had on hand. So substitute. That's fine. We should always be substituting. I wish I had also written a part on substitutions, which I'm not sure if I did. Justice spell. This is a really nice basic justice spell for those who haven't received justice from law enforcement or legal system. Most justice spells I know of have a little bit more kick to it. And I would say that if you're looking for justice magic, you should go to people who historically have faced criminalization by the justice system, oppression by the justice system, and like learn from them if appropriate. Or you can go to someone who's versed in those workings and receive services from them and have them work on your behalf. Because we don't always have to like do it ourselves. But like law keep away work, specifically in hoodoo and conjure, that's what I would go to instead of writing my own justice spell, especially if I knew someone who needed that and they were within the group of facing that kind of criminalization or etc., like difficulties from the justice system. Other things include, like, do I think that you can do this justice spell? Yes. Do I like that it was included? Yes. Do I think that could have spent a little bit more time learning from folks who have spent a long time doing justice work? Yeah. Other things that I consider justice work that aren't like a candle spell: mutual aid, getting into your community, and communal protection work. I think everything I do in a way, especially in ancestral practices, has become an element of my justice work. And when we're really truly asking ourselves what is justified and what is justice, our practice reflects that. And to me, that isn't a candle spell that you can do. It is something about actually embodying it and knowing your privilege and knowing when someone is asking you for help and you can help them, and knowing when to step down or go ask someone else, and knowing when you should maybe be quiet and listen. In truth, I do think that justice work isn't just like, it goes beyond that. And I'm sure I wrote that too, but it goes beyond that. And especially when we're going up against systems that have existed for so long and targeted specific groups of folks and marginalized groups for so long, sometimes it's better to ask them what they need than to assume that we know. And sometimes what they need may not be a spell. Maybe it will be a spell, but this is something that I've learned in doing client work. A lot of folks come to me and say, you know, I want this. This is what I want. This is justice. And it's not always what we feel it's going to be. I do think too, there's something to be said about how justice work and baneful work intertwine. A lot of times we want justice to be this clear-cut thing that looks a specific way and behaves a specific way, and this is like the spell we do and we're targeting it just for justice. But sometimes justice is a very intense protection spell. Sometimes justice is a banishing spell. Sometimes justice is a money working to make sure someone gets a certain amount of money to fight legal fees. Sometimes it's law keep away. Sometimes it's a court protection, like a court working. Sometimes it's all of these things that we can't just do a spell and say this is a justice spell. We have to actually look and ask ourselves, what is justified? What is justified for this person who is facing this? What do they need? What do they want from this situation? And sometimes they just want someone to talk to. And that's all, and that's justice in that moment. Or that's what they need. Spells for change. Was proud of that bibliography. I will say though, calendula flowers are very good for justice work, as are a little bit of clove for that domination aspect, and oregano. I would still use all these things. I would do this justice spell specifically with another working that I feel is justified, whatever that looks like and whatever that is for the client or whatever that is for me. And this spell I would use to power and push the other spell that I'm doing for justice, or for that justified work. Because like we said, justice isn't just like something that we can always do. I do think there are lots of benefits to justice spells, but like I said, I don't always know if we are the best people to decide what justice is and what it looks like for another person. If someone's coming to you and says, hey, I want a spell for justice, that's a different thing. But if you're like, I'm going to do this justice spell, but I'm not going to actually ask the person what is justified. Center the person who's at the hands of the injustice when we do this work. That is what I would say about this section in particular. Like I said, overall, there are a lot of things that I agree with in this book and a lot of things that I still work with. I do love my Saint and Ancestor Altar section. I do think that there are a lot of folks who can still get benefits from this. However, I grew as a person. My practice changed. The path I was walking changed. And that doesn't mean that this book didn't serve a purpose in how I grew as a practitioner and didn't help people along the way. And, you know, ultimately I am very proud of it. My sweet first child. As another first child, we know that we don't always pop out perfect. That is me revisiting Spells for Change. This is me, telling you that I have a new book coming out, and if you like my folk magic, my ancestral veneration content, all of those things that I talk about more now, this book is specifically geared towards folk traditions and reconnection. It's a little bit more intense and it's a little deeper than this book. I do think this book was very light, shallow, and as I've become more rooted in my practice, so has kind of what I'm writing. If you're interested in still reading things from me, I have a blog where you can read posts on folk magic, petition paper, making paper charm bags, all of these things that I do on a day-to-day basis. But overall, thank you for watching this video. If you want to help me decide what video comes out next, you can join my Patreon. It also helps me, survive. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, let me know if you read this book and if you got something from it that helped you in your practice. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Siate benedetti. Also known as Che Dio te benedica, but Siate benedetti is the plural. We're talking to a lot of people right now.